So for those of you who didn't know, and to be honest, I don't blame you, given my current YouTube status of posting nothing but redstone for weeks on end, I make packs a lot. I do a lot of resource packs and behavior pack development, and it's another pastime besides making uh, pointlessly complicated redstone doors. There is a new pack that I made out on MCPDL now, and with a great amount of excitement, I'm going to run you through some of the features of this pack in this video. Now, the pack is called Prosparity, for I think an obvious reason, which is a bit of a play on words, as you can tell, because, well, prosperity and parity, it's like a funny haha moment because I'm smashing the words together. I, I need to stop talking. Without any further ado, allow me to run you through some of the features of this brand new behaviour pack. Let's go. So you guys may have actually noticed this particular change as I've been walking around mostly aimlessly through this tiny little village. It's so small. Um, that's right, the grass distribution has been changed. Look how much grass there is in this world. It is absolutely obscene. There is 10 times as much grass as there was before, which admittedly may be a little bit too much. If any more details could be given to me as to how, actually how much grass is in an average Java world, that would be extremely helpful. But yeah, as you can see, the grass distribution has changed. There's much more grass in plains and savanna biomes now. But rather than jumping straight in at the deep end with world generation changes, I'm going to start off quite small with items. So starting things off with the enchanted golden apple, which will now give regeneration 2 for 20 seconds instead of regeneration 5 for 30. So you see, if I eat this enchanted golden apple, then it's going to give me regeneration 2 for 20 seconds instead of regeneration 5 for 30. I don't think it's too much of an issue because it's still going to regenerate quite quickly, but that's just that's parity, that's how it works in Java, and so I made it do that on Bedrock as well. I don't think I need to say that. I think it's pretty obvious at this point. In a similar vein, with items giving effects and stuff, pufferfish are now considerably less powerful. So if I eat a pufferfish, then what it's going to do is give me nausea 1 and poison 2 instead of nausea 2 and poison 4. So you're going to take damage just a little bit less quickly now with the poison effect, and also the the camera distortion is going to be considerably less obnoxious. Also, dried kelp has slightly more saturation than before. Previously, it would use the poor saturation modifier, and with this pack Prosperity, it now uses the low saturation modifier. So it's still one of the worst food sources, let's be honest, but it gives more saturation. The opposite happens with sweet berries, where actually it has less saturation now. It has the poor saturation modifier instead of low, so you don't get quite as much saturation when you eat sweet berries now. I think it's worth noting that I sacrifice good parity for overall parity. See, some of the changes in this pack, if I were a Mojang developer, I would probably pick the best bits from both Java and Bedrock and kind of smash them together. But this particular pack only focuses on parity as a whole, so I had to sacrifice some things which potentially some of us loved on Bedrock. Suspicious stew can now also be eaten with full hunger. So if I go into survival mode like that, you can see my hunger bar is completely full, but yet I can eat this suspicious stew, and I got the night vision effect. Very nice. So that's about it for items, but I've actually kept all of these items in my hotbar for the reason that sweet berries have another change to them. See, for whatever reason in Bedrock Edition, and I don't know this either, and I won't pretend like I do, you can't place sweet berries on top of farmland, but with this pack you can, like that. It can grow on farmland, just like it should. There's not much more that I can say to this, really. So moving on through the list now, I'm going to have to speed this up a little bit because there are, for the record, around 50 to 60 changes in Prosparity. So, you know, there's a lot to show here. But we're moving on to recipes now. So there are, for some reason, a lot of parity issues in recipes. I didn't really know how many there were until I started working on this pack and doing lots of research for it. But the most notable one, I think, in this pack is that you don't need shovels to craft boats anymore. Look at that! It's an absolute revolution. I I think, whoa, that boat just completely disappeared. Anyway, I think, in my opinion, having shovels to craft boats made them considerably just more annoying to craft, particularly if you want to do it in bulk, for whatever reason. So just removing the shovel entirely makes it so much more convenient. There we go. I've got 12 boats in my inventory now, really, really quickly and straightforward. No shovel required. And similarly, similarly, I don't know what I'm talking about. You also only need planks and slabs to craft barrels now. Normally you'd have sticks down the sides and then a slab at the top and the bottom, but that's not the same in Java. So now you can just put planks down the sides and slab at the top and the bottom, and it will give you a barrel just the same. And I phrase that as if you can still use sticks to craft barrels, which you can't. Soul torches can now be crafted with charcoal. So if I get out some charcoal, I'm going to need to get rid of all of these boats in my inventory. They're really... they're making my demonstration much more difficult. Okay, so you can craft soul torches with... in the same way as you would before, but you can also use charcoal at the top instead now. And obviously this works with soul sand and soul soil. And that still works. Now, stone cutters previously would be crafted with any stone variant you wanted. So you can put diorite here, granite here, and stone if you want, and put your iron ingot in the middle. But that's not the case in Java. So now what I did is that you can only craft stone cutters if you have stone at the bottom. So it won't accept any other variant of stone. So just like that. You see, if I replace it with, say, diorite, then the crafting recipe is just going to ultimately stop working. Also, in Bedrock Edition, you're able to place a cobweb in your crafting grid and get 9 string back from the recipe, but that no longer works because it's not the case in Java. Doesn't matter how hard I try or where I put my cobwebs, you can't craft cobwebs into string anymore. And also, having just recently moved on from the concept of stonecutter recipes, there are actually some more crafting recipes in stonecutters, and this villager is kind of he's barging in on my demonstration a little bit. But if you get some stone bricks, then you can place your stone bricks and you're able to craft chiseled stone bricks in return. I don't know why you're not able to do this in vanilla Bedrock Edition, but I made it happen in Prosparity. Okay, and similarly, I keep saying similarly. I mean, similarly. Similarly, you're able to get some sandstone and put the sandstone in the stone cutter, and then you're able to craft cut sandstone slabs from that sandstone. You're not normally able to do this. This also works with red sandstone and also cut sandstone in general. So if you put cut sandstone here, it will also give you those, which again, for some reason, it didn't before. So that's really nice in my opinion. You're able to craft cut sandstone slabs with stonecutters now. Okay, moving on to a very, very long list of mob-related features now. There are so many features relating to mobs. So buckle in. First of all, foxes now have 10 health points as opposed to 20. that's considered a bug. Oh, and by the way, if you check out the MCPDL page, and I've listed bug reports to each and every one of these changes, so long as they're applicable, which could be really interesting for you to go and check those out. But if you get a fox here, this one in particular spawned with an item, which is something I'll get onto a bit later on. Then you only need to punch it, hypothetically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and it will die, whereas normally you'd have to do that 10 times. Also, while we're on the concept of health changes to mobs, I'm going to bring one to you that I think Bedrock players across the board are going to absolutely rejoice about. That's right, Withers now have 300 health points like they do on Java, as opposed to 600, which makes them so much easier to kill. I don't know the best way to demonstrate this. I think what I'll do is I'll fill an area in the sky with bedrock like that. And if I break myself out, there we go. And I'll just use a summon command to summon a wither beneath me, so I'll do that 5, I guess. So any minute now the wither should spawn, and its health bar should decrease much more rapidly than it would in vanilla. As you can see, that's going down ridiculously quickly, actually. It's not going to take very long for this wither to die if you trap it in a bedrock cage, compared to vanilla. I wish I could change some of the other wither behaviors, such as the attacks that it had and the fact that it explodes 3 times during its lifespan, so long as you're attacking it or whatever. But it seems like most of those are hard coded apart from the health value. So I'm sorry about that. There's nothing really I can do. Speaking of damage, bees will now take damage in water. So this doesn't happen normally, but now, as you can see, if you place a bee in water, then it will start drowning instantly. Presumably it's something to do with the water getting on its wings and hurting it. I don't exactly know why the bee takes damage, but it just does, and that's the way it works in Java, so I don't care. Now for a really niche change that I don't think any of you will care about. But if you were to feed a wolf in Bedrock Edition, then it would restore the same amount of health for the particular food type that you give it, that it would restore the hunger for player. I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to grammatically word that sentence, but the point being, I guess, if you feed a wolf, it will now restore the appropriate amount of health rather than just boosting it up with like 8 health points or whatever. So so yeah, you can now feed your puppies slightly more food than before. Another very minimal change, this time to wandering traders. Usually they would drink invisibility potions. I don't know why they immediately drink invisibility potions. I think that's probably a bug in my pack. Normally they would just drink invisibility potions when they're near a hostile mob, when they're injured, or when it's nighttime. But I should have made it so that they only drink it when it's nighttime and it's got nothing to do with hostile mobs. But clearly, he's quite happy being invisible during the daytime, so I probably ought to go and check that out and make sure nothing's going on that shouldn't be. The silverfish are no longer hostile to iron golems. Like that, the iron golem will still be hostile to the silverfish, but not the other way around. So yeah, again, super niche change, doesn't really concern anybody, but I think it's quite cool. And actually similar, in a similar topic to provocation of mobs and things, if you have a Johnny Vindicator, so if I just summon a Vindicator here with the name Johnny, like that, then it will now go after Ravagers. That didn't happen before. The reason being that, well, in Bedrock Edition, Ravagers are considered illagers, which means that the Johnny Vindicator actually wouldn't go for the Ravager. It doesn't seem to be particularly reliable. Oh, no, there we go. There we go. The Johnny Vindicator's attacking the Ravager. So this wouldn't happen before. That didn't... These guys are powerful. And actually, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if I head over into the Nether, Piglin Brutes, if I could spell Piglin rather than going Pilgin, which clearly isn't a thing, that does not exist. Piglin Brutes will no longer attack Hoglins. You see, they're existing in perfect harmony together, and all is well in the world. So this one's actually going to need me to go into survival mode, but if I get an Enderman out, actually I'll keep the spawn egg and not spawn it in just yet. If I give myself an invisibility effect, and I'll apply that for like a while, and then turn myself into survival, then no matter how hard I look at this Enderman, I'm not actually going to provoke it. See, in Java Edition, Enderman can't be provoked by invisible players unless you punch it. But in Bedrock Edition, if an invisible player looked at an Enderman, then the Enderman would still attack, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I changed that. The same thing also happens with Guardians. That was clever. Yeah, the same thing happens with Guardians as well. So you can't provoke Guardians and Endermen anymore if you're under the invisibility effect. Very nice and helpful, I guess. So a couple of changes to mob spawning. Pandas now only spawn in bamboo jungles. Normally they would spawn in bamboo jungles and also jungles, but in Java they exclusively spawn in bamboo jungles, so I changed that as well. And now ocelots are not able to spawn in bamboo jungles, so it's come full circle. I've swapped them over. Ocelots can no longer spawn in bamboo jungles. Pandas now only spawn in bamboo jungles, not jungles as well. Speaking of ocelots, I guess, and cats and whatever, cats will no longer have a 50% chance of spawning as a black cat during a full moon night. This is going to be so difficult to demonstrate, so I'm not going to. You just have to take my word for it. But black cats, I'm not talking about the tuxedo ones like this one here. I'm talking about the like properly black ones with the yellow eyes. They would previously be able to spawn naturally, whereas now they're only able to spawn in witch huts alongside the menacing witch. And similarly, cats will no longer have a 25% chance of spawning as a kitten naturally. So if I get out a cat spawn egg just like this, and just spawn a whole load of cats, they're meowing their little heads off. You see, none of these are kittens, and we should have expected at least a quarter of them to be kittens. So now kittens can only spawn if you breed two cats together. Actually, going back to Wandering Traders, I could have maybe done that a little bit better. Wandering Traders will no longer despawn after all of their trades are used up. So yeah, I guess you can hold your Wandering Traders hostage for a little bit longer, even after completely trading them dry, basically. It's a little fact about shulkers that I don't know how many of you know, probably quite a lot of you, is that normally you are able to dye them in creative mode. So if you place a shulker down, just like the shulker boxes that you have, you're able to just right click on them and dye them a different color. But currently I'm clicking very hard and he's just not dying, because that's the case on Java. Shulkers cannot be dyed on Java Edition. So I changed that to be the case as well. Going back to Wandering Traders again, I'm ever so sorry. Wandering Traders can no longer close and open wooden doors. That's about it. Really straightforward. Phantoms are no longer afraid of ocelots. Really small change. I'm not sure it's ever a problem. But yeah, phantoms will now only be scared of cats and not ocelots as well, because that's the case on Java, obviously. So actually, you might be interested by the fact, and I didn't know this until I started development on this pack, is that there are a lot of different types of jockeys in Bedrock Edition that extend beyond just chicken jockeys and spider jockeys. There are loads of different mobs that can be ridden by zombies and skeletons and things. But I changed those to be all as they should be, basically. So you only get chicken jockeys, you only get spider jockeys. Cave spider jockeys are no longer a thing. Everything works, I guess, as we've known it. I don't think I've ever seen anything beside a chicken jockey and a spider jockey, but you know, you, that's that's just an interesting thing about Bedrock Edition, I guess. We're going to need to head back over to the Nether for this particular change, and it's one that I am extremely passionate about because I've made it so that piglins now require 6 seconds to barter instead of 8. I don't know why this was ever a thing, but for some reason piglins just took longer to decide what to do with your gold. Um, but I decreased it to be 6 seconds. So if I get out some gold and I give it to him, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there we go. Now we'll drop the item instead of 8 seconds. So it works much quicker. You can have much more efficient bartering stations, assuming you don't know about forced bartering, but that's a whole different ballpark. My goodness. Going back into the overworld now. By the way, I'm reading these changes in exactly the list that I did on MCPDL, which means that it seems a bit disjointed. I'm kind of skipping back and forth between different mobs because it's not set out for a commentary based video. But anyway, shulkers will now give levitation 1 instead of levitation 2. So if you're in an end city and you're fighting and whatever else, then you're not going to launch up in the air quite so quickly. So if I just get rid of my effects and things like that, then you should launch Shulker Bullet. And there we go. You can see I do levitate still, of course, but it's not quite so quick. You can see levitation 1 rather than levitation 2. Much more convenient. And I mean, you still die, I guess. So this next change is one that some of you might be a little bit sad to see go, but salmon, these guys right here, they now only spawn in one size. I know, big salmon are to go. IBX Toy Cat fans are probably furious right now, but yeah, in Java Edition they only have one size, but in Bedrock Edition they vary between 3 different sizes. But yeah, now they're only what was previously the medium size of salmon. So you can see I'm spawning so many salmon here, and they're all exactly the same size. And actually, very similarly, talking about sizes of fish, tropical fish are now the correct size. Previously, they were way too big. They were like 130% what they should be, but now they're really small, really really cute, really atmospheric, rather than being absolutely enormous. So yeah, tropical fish are smaller. Amazing. In Java Edition, there are no baby variants of squid, glow squid, and dolphins. So I think you get the gist by now. I made that on Bedrock as well. There are no baby squid, no baby glow squid, and no baby dolphins as well. I'm spawning a lot of dolphins here, and yeah, none of them are babies, and the same with squids. You get the idea. It's a really small change that actually no one cares about. I was going to say even I was going to say maybe some tech players out there, but no, tech players won't care about this either. Foxes, they previously had a 20% chance of holding an egg and a 15% chance of holding a feather, but I swapped them around because that's how it works in Java. Actually, going back to wolves, I know we talked about wolves a little bit earlier on, but there are a bunch of items that could be fed to wolves that couldn't in Java, so I changed them all, basically. You could previously feed wolves raw cod, raw salmon, pufferfish, tropical fish, cooked cod, cooked salmon, and rabbit stew, but those have all been removed to match Java Edition, basically. And actually, we're moving on to mob loot now. So we're still sticking with mobs, but we're talking about what items they drop. So guardians, elder guardians, and polar bears will now drop cooked fish when killed with fire. So if I give myself a netherite sword, which is of course the best type of sword, and enchant it with fire aspect like that, and we summon in, for example, a polar bear, and you see he's definitely on fire and drops cooked salmon, just like that. Same thing happens with guardians, same thing happens with elder guardians. And also the same thing happens with zombies, which will now drop baked potatoes instead of regular potatoes when you kill them with fire. You get the gist. It's actually a really cool little change that I really wish was implemented into Bedrock Edition. It was super easy. I just had to copy and paste one particular loot table condition underneath the item that I wanted to cook, and yeah, it all works, and it works really well too, so that's nice. Going back to fish, actually, so I may need to get out my sword for this one, but fish will now drop bone meal instead of bones. I don't know why this one slipped through the net in the Mojang development team, but yeah, if you kill fish, then they should. Maybe they just have a really small chance of dropping bone meal. Honest to God, I did make this change, but it doesn't seem to be very telling right now. So do you remember I talked about a really niche change with foxes that no one actually cares about? Well, this one might be slightly more notable, but it's still quite niche. Foxes will now have only an 8.5% chance of dropping their held items instead of 100%, like it is in Bedrock. Pillagers will now no longer drop arrows when they die. So if I kill this pillager right here, then it won't drop arrows. Instead, it has an 8.5% chance of dropping its crossbow, but nothing else. So yeah, there isn't much loot for the pillager now, which is a bit unfortunate, but there we are. This one is one that I am extremely excited to bring you, because it took me a really long time to figure out and work on. But sea turtles, just here, normally when you kill them, and their limbs fly around absolutely maniacally, then it will drop seagrass. Do we get a demonstration? No, we don't get any seagrass there. Never mind. But normally that's the case when turtles are killed by lightning as well. But in Java Edition, for whatever reason, when turtles are killed by lightning strikes, then they drop bowls instead of their regular loot. Why bowls? I have absolutely no idea, but I did it anyway. So as you'll be able to see, if I summon in a lightning bolt at the turtle's location, then hopefully, no, I think the item probably burned up in the fire. Oh, I think I have been collecting the bowls as I've been going, but I just haven't noticed it. So yeah, turtles will drop bowls now when you kill them with lightning. So you can create a fully automatic bowl farm. I can't wait for those. Hey, remember the super niche fox change that no one cares about? Well, here's another one. Foxes will now drop 1 to 2 experience points rather than 1 to 3. So there's a bit less reward for killing the precious foxes, you monster. If you were to fish using a fishing rod in a jungle biome, then for whatever reason, despite being able to do it in any other biome across the board, you wouldn't be able to get tropical fish or puffer fish, but now that's been changed as well, and consequently you now have a 25% chance of getting salmon rather than a 40% chance, because that accounts for the extra items that you get from the loot table. It's a 2% chance of getting a tropical fish and a 13% chance of getting a puffer fish. So if you add that up, that's 15, and if you add that to 25, then that's 40. So as you can understand, I had to change the the quantity of salmon in order to account for the extra items. I just thought that was a pretty interesting thing to throw in there. I'm not sure if anyone actually cares about it. We'll see. We will find out. We're moving on now to things other than mobs, because I've spent a very long time talking about mob features, only some of which are actually particularly relevant. This one, maybe some of you will be sad to see it go, but I've personally never found any involvement in it. But you can no longer lease boats. In Java Edition, you can't lease boats. In Bedrock, you can. So in Prosparity, you can't. As you can see, I'm trying very hard to click on the boat with a leash, and it's just not happening. You can no longer lease boats in Bedrock Edition if you've got this pack enabled. We're moving on to some of my favourite features of this pack, which are the world generation changes. I did mention right at the beginning of the video that grass distribution has changed. You get 10 times more grass in savanna and plains biomes now, but there are a few other things which I want to mention. First of all, basalt columns now generate far more abundantly and are much, much taller. I will attach an image because in this particular seed I can't actually find a basalt delta biome. But yeah, you'll be able to see a side by side on screen now. So that's really, really interesting in my opinion. And also something which I can demonstrate if we head over to the Nether. Huge fungi in warped or crimson forest. So this is a crimson one, obviously, and there's warped one over there. Huge fungi will now generate twice as abundantly. So you get much denser forests, much more atmosphere, much like what we were seeing in the Minecraft Live, trailers and things in 2019. That feels like a really long time ago. But yeah, huge fungi are now much more abundant. So that's really, really cool. Fallen and dying trees will no longer generate in your worlds. I'm not sure if you've noticed, maybe some of the eagle-eyed would among you. And I can't wait for the comments about those two words I just said. In Bedrock Edition, you'd get some trees that would just generate like this, and you also get trees that have vines on their sides like this, neither of which will generate anymore. They've both been replaced by regular tree counterparts to match Java Edition. And also, I'd love to finish off on a high note by being able to show you something in person, but I'm not sure I am able to. Basically, for whatever reason, in jungle biomes, in Java Edition, the little bushes that you get on the ground, right? So you'd have like a little tuft of leaves or whatever. They would generate with oak leaves and jungle logs instead of jungle leaves and jungle logs. So obviously, I changed that. There are a lot of changes in this pack, so I definitely advise you go and download it. You can find the link in the description. I've been working very, very hard on trying to get this as close to Java as possible, but as you can see, there are still a few bugs that I'm going to need to be aware of. So make sure you comment those bugs down below, or comment them on the MCPDL post, or DM me on Discord, or really anything. Just make me aware of the bugs or any suggestions that you have. But actually, that's about it for this video. So most of the details for Prosparity can be found on MCPDL, which is where you download this from in the first place. But I'm just going to run you through a few extra things which you might want to consider. First of all, when you've actually got the pack enabled, you must make sure before you even open the world with it in that you've got holiday creator features enabled and custom biome features enabled. If you don't have either of these on, then the pack simply won't work. The reason being, custom biomes changes the the terrain features so that you get all of the nice grass distribution and the huge fungus distribution and stuff like that. and holiday creator features allows for the turtle dropping bowl feature to work, basically. So make sure you've got both of those enabled, and also make sure you're in 1.18.10. It won't work in versions prior, because of the way, again, that I've done the turtle dropping bowls feature. And also, when you enable it on your world, you have the option, because I understand, right, that world generation changes, all that grass can be a little bit jarring and can be a little bit difficult for your device to handle potentially. So I have added an option within the pack itself to enable or disable those changes. So all you do when you've got the pack enabled on your world like this, so it should look like this: Prosparity, it's got that nice icon in the corner. You want to click on it and then click the cog icon at the bottom like that, and it will say changes to world generation enabled, because this is the default, right? So if you want to disable the world changes, then you just drag this slider all the way across and it will go red and say disabled. So now when you open up your world for the first time with this pack enabled, you won't get any world generation changes whatsoever. I'll update the MCPDL page and also make a follow-up video every single time I update this pack, as I have done with all of my packs thus far, so you can definitely know when things like that are going underway. Also, the very final thing I want to mention is that since this is a pack that fixes loads of parity issues and whatnot, it goes extremely well with Java Aspects by Agent Mindstorm and VDX Java UI by Quicksalt. I'd probably pronounce that Quicksalt's name wrong. I apologize if that's the case. I'll leave links to both those down in the description below. Agent Mindstorm is one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to resource pack making, so make sure you go and check him out. He makes brilliant videos on YouTube talking about his creative process, and it's really interesting to see it go down. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, make sure you follow the links in the description. As always, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to mention. Back to myself to do the outro. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the slightly disjointed, unhinged feel of this video, because I'm slightly out of practice doing recording, was manageable for you, and I will see you next time. I've got a really exciting video on the way that I think you're all going to love, so make sure you stay tuned for that and consider subscribing if you're not already, because that is the best way of keeping on top of all of my uploads. And I'm also streaming on YouTube now as well, which is really, really cool. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.